He's made millions laugh, given powerful life advice, and built an empire from the ground up. But behind the cameras and smiles, Steve Harvey has been hiding a heartbreaking truth. In a raw and emotional moment, he finally opens up about the pain that's tearing his world apart, the collapse of his marriage. What he says will shock you and stay with you long after the video ends. This isn't just celebrity gossip. It's a story of love, betrayal, and a man finally reaching his breaking point. To the world, Steve Harvey and Marjorie were the ultimate power couple. When you looked at them, you saw success, style, love, and loyalty. Whether they were walking hand in hand on a red carpet, sharing laughs in interviews, or posting sweet photos on social media, they seemed completely in sync. Like two people who had found their soulmate and weren't afraid to show it. Steve often talked about how meeting Marjorie changed his life. He gave her credit for helping him become the man he is today, focused, balanced, and driven. In interviews, he'd call her his queen, his ride or die. She wasn't just his wife, she was his best friend, his muse, his support system. And people loved them for it. Fans admired how they built a blended family, how they supported each other's dreams, and how they always seemed to uplift one another. Their relationship became a symbol of what many people hoped for, lasting love that could survive anything, even fame and fortune. Steve, a man who had gone through 2 divorces before, often spoke about how Marjorie was the one. He'd tell stories of their first meeting, how she walked into the room and he knew instantly she was special. That story was retold so many times it became part of their legend. It wasn't just romantic, it was inspiring. Together, they built a lifestyle many admired. Luxury vacations, designer clothes, private jets, all part of the life they showed the public. But it wasn't just about the money. What people really saw was the emotional bond. They looked happy, real, like a couple who had figured it out. Over time, Steve and Marjorie became more than just husband and wife. They became a brand. She ran a fashion blog. He continued hosting shows, writing books, giving relationship advice. And they did it all while lifting each other up, at least from the outside. Their love seemed like a beautiful, unshakable foundation for everything they had built. But as we now know, not everything that glitters is gold. What looked like unbreakable love on the outside may have been hiding cracks behind the scenes. The same couple that inspired millions with their unity is now at the center of a heartbreaking story, one that proves even the strongest images can be shattered when the cameras are off. At first glance, everything about Steve Harvey and Marjorie looked picture perfect. They smiled for the cameras, supported each other at big events, and shared loving posts online. But behind the scenes, something had changed. Slowly, quietly, the energy between them began to shift. People closest to them started to notice it first. Less laughter, shorter conversations, long silences where there used to be warmth. Steve was always busy, moving from one show to the next, hosting, producing, writing, building his brand nonstop. And while Marjorie had her own life and projects, she seemed more distant than usual. The couple, who once couldn't stop talking about each other, now rarely said anything at all in public. Then came the rumors. At first they were whispers. Social media picked up stories that something wasn't quite right. Gossip blogs posted headlines like, "Trouble in Paradise?" or "Sources claim Steve and Marjorie living separate lives." There were photos taken of them looking tense in public, sitting apart at events, or not traveling together like they used to. Fans brushed it off. Couples go through ups and downs, after all. But soon, the whispers grew louder. Some insiders claimed there were trust issues, accusations that Marjorie had grown emotionally distant and that Steve had become withdrawn. Others said they were living more like business partners than husband and wife. They appeared together when they needed to, but behind closed doors, there was little connection left. One source even claimed that they were no longer sharing a bedroom and had been spending more and more time apart, even when they were in the same house. Steve reportedly stayed late at the studio or slept in a different wing of the house. Marjorie, meanwhile, took longer solo trips, often without telling him in advance. The love that once felt so solid was quietly fading, not with a bang, but with silence. And silence can be louder than any fight. Still, Steve tried to keep things together. He's a man of pride, and for someone who gives relationship advice for a living, a broken marriage is more than personal. It's public. He smiled through interviews, cracked jokes on stage, and acted like everything was fine. But those close to him could see. Something was weighing on him. His energy was off. His smile didn't reach his eyes anymore. The rumors took a darker turn when some blogs accused Marjorie of cheating, not once, but more than once. There was no hard proof, but the stories spread fast. Photos were posted, messages were speculated about, and suddenly, what once seemed like tabloid gossip started to look more serious. Steve didn't respond to the stories, but fans noticed that he had removed some posts and became more private on social media. It was as if he was trying to protect himself or hide the truth. Marjorie didn't say much either. She continued posting beautiful photos, quoting scriptures, and sharing fashion updates, but her tone seemed off. The couple stopped appearing together in videos. There were fewer interviews, fewer joint appearances, and then came the real signs. Steve started dropping hints on his shows. In one moment, on his talk show, Steve talked about betrayal. He didn't mention Marjorie by name, but he spoke from a place of pain. "Sometimes, the people you love the most are the ones who hurt you the deepest," he said, pausing just long enough for the audience to feel the weight of it. Was he talking about his wife? Nobody knew for sure, but it felt personal. And then, during a radio interview, he said something that caught everyone's attention. "You can forgive, but forgetting, that's different. Some things leave a scar." Again, no name was said, but the message was clear. Something had happened, and he was still hurting from it. Even close friends began to speak up. Quietly, off the record, they said Steve was struggling. He had tried everything to save the relationship: therapy, counseling, even taking time off work to focus on his marriage. But nothing worked. They were just too far apart. The connection was broken, and no amount of money or love could fix it. Steve had always been proud of how he turned his life around. He had worked hard to build everything he had: his career, his family, his legacy, and Marjorie had been a big part of that journey. Letting go wasn't easy, but after months of trying, it seemed like even he had to admit their time together might be over. In private, he was heartbroken. Friends said he would break down in tears when no one was watching. He blamed himself. He asked where he went wrong. He replayed moments over and over in his head, wondering if he missed the signs earlier. He had trusted her completely, given her his heart, his name, his world. And now, all of it felt like it was slipping away. The tension in the home became unbearable. Conversations turned into arguments. Small things turned into big fights. At some point, the love that had once brought them together now just reminded them of how far they had drifted apart. And when the silence returned, it wasn't peaceful. It was cold. People say that heartbreak doesn't always come from sudden explosions. Sometimes it comes from slow erosion, like waves wearing down a stone. That's what this felt like. 1,000 small moments where connection was lost. 1,000 quiet nights when love slowly faded. Steve Harvey's marriage didn't break overnight. It broke over time. Piece by piece, word by word, moment by moment, until there was nothing left but pain and memories. And now, as he stands on the edge of divorce, the man who once gave the world advice on love and happiness is left asking the same questions everyone asks when love falls apart. What happened to us, and how did we get here? Steve Harvey had always been known for keeping it together. No matter what was going on in his personal life, he showed up with a smile, cracked jokes, and spoke with confidence. That was his job. Whether he was hosting a game show, giving motivational speeches, or talking to fans about love and life, Steve was the strong, funny, wise guy everyone could count on. But even the strongest people have their limits. And one day, Steve reached his. He had been holding it all in for too long. The pain, the confusion, the anger, and most of all, the heartbreak. For months, maybe even years, he had tried to act like everything was fine. He wanted to protect his image, his family, and the woman he once called the love of his life. But the truth was, he was falling apart behind the scenes. And the more he tried to pretend it was okay, the heavier the weight became. Then came the day when it all became too much. It happened during a taping of his radio show. The topic wasn't even about relationships at first. They were talking about trust and how hard it is to repair once it's broken. A caller had asked how to forgive someone who had betrayed them. Steve was quiet for a moment. His co-hosts waited. The audience waited. And then, Steve started talking. Not like a host, not like a performer, but like a man who had been holding back tears for way too long. "I gotta tell you," he said, his voice shaky. "Forgiveness. That's a hard thing. Especially when it's someone you never thought would hurt you." There was a long pause. You could hear him take a breath, like he was trying to push the emotion back down, but this time, he couldn't. "I'm not gonna lie," he continued. "I've been going through something that's broken me in ways I never expected. And I've tried to be strong, tried to keep my head up. But when you love somebody with your whole heart, and they betray that love, it's hard to breathe." The studio was silent. His co-hosts didn't interrupt. Nobody laughed, no music played. It was just Steve, raw and exposed, finally letting the pain out. He didn't say her name. He didn't have to. Everyone knew who he was talking about. For years, Steve had praised Marjorie publicly. He'd called her his queen, his blessing, the woman who saved his life. And now, here he was, barely holding it together, confessing to the world that things were far from perfect. "I'm not here to bash anybody," he said. "But when you're loyal, when you give everything and it's not returned, it leaves a hole, a deep one. And I've been walking around with that hole in my chest, pretending I'm okay, but I'm not." His voice cracked. He wiped away tears. The man who had given love advice to millions was now struggling to find the words to describe his own heartbreak. He talked about the sleepless nights, the questions he kept asking himself, the guilt he felt for not seeing it sooner. He wondered if maybe he was too focused on work, too distracted, too trusting. He admitted that he had tried to fix things behind the scenes. He went to therapy, he prayed, he even considered stepping away from everything just to focus on saving his marriage. But in the end, he said, you can't make someone stay if their heart is already gone. The confession didn't come with anger. There was no hate in his voice, just pain. Deep, heavy pain that had clearly been building for a long time. "I'm a grown man," he said. "I've been through hard times. I've lost before. But this one cuts different. Because it came from the one place I thought I was safe." He looked into the camera and said something that left viewers speechless. "Don't ever believe that fame or success can protect your heart. At the end of the day, we all bleed the same, we all hurt the same, and sometimes the smile you see on someone's face is just a mask hiding the storm inside." It was one of the rawest, most vulnerable moments Steve Harvey had ever shared. Fans who were used to seeing the confident, collected version of him were shocked to see the man behind the curtain, someone grieving, lost, and broken. After the broadcast, social media exploded. People flooded the comments with messages of support. Some shared their own stories of betrayal. Others thanked Steve for being so honest, and some simply said they were praying for him. But for Steve, the confession wasn't about attention. It was about release. It was the first time he had truly let himself feel the full weight of what he had been carrying. And once he did, there was no turning back. In the following days, he stayed quiet. No statements, no interviews, no posts, just silence. It was clear he needed time. Not to fix things, but to heal. Behind closed doors, sources say Steve started preparing for the next step: divorce. It wasn't what he wanted, but after everything he had been through, he realized he couldn't keep pretending. The marriage was over, and no matter how much it hurt, he had to let it go. That radio show moment became a turning point, not just for Steve's relationship, but for how people saw him. He wasn't just a celebrity anymore. He was a human being, going through real pain, trying to find peace in the middle of heartbreak. And in that moment of honesty, Steve Harvey showed the world that even the strongest hearts can break, and that it's okay to cry when they do. After the emotional confession, after the silence, after the headlines started to cool down, one question still echoed in the minds of Steve Harvey's fans. What happens now? What does life look like for a man who has spent years building an empire on hope, love, faith, and wisdom, only to find his own heart shattered? For Steve Harvey, the days following his public admission weren't about moving on quickly. They were about slowing down. For the first time in years, he wasn't rushing to catch a flight, film a show, or attend an event. He stepped back. He stopped appearing on social media. He let the world talk, while he focused on figuring out who he was now that everything had changed. Friends said he was quieter, more reflective. He still showed up to work when he needed to, but the spark was missing. That famous laugh of his, the big, loud, joyful laugh that could fill a room, wasn't heard as often. He wasn't broken, but he was clearly healing. And healing takes time. One of the biggest changes happened at home. Or rather, what used to be home. Sources close to the family confirmed that Steve had officially moved out. The house that once held memories, holidays, family dinners, and laughter had now become a place of too much tension. He needed a space of his own, somewhere quiet, somewhere private, somewhere safe. Behind the scenes, the divorce process had begun. Lawyers were involved, as expected, but Steve didn't want a messy public war. That wasn't who he was. He asked for privacy. He wanted peace, not revenge. Despite the betrayal, despite the pain, he didn't want to destroy the woman he once loved. He just wanted to move forward. With dignity, if possible. But of course, the media had other plans. The tabloids didn't let go. They kept digging, trying to find every little detail of what went wrong. Old photos were reanalyzed, old interviews rewatched. Stories were written about who might have been involved, what arguments had happened behind closed doors, and even how much money might be at stake in the divorce. People speculated about Marjorie's next move. Would she speak up? Would she fight back? Would she tell her side of the story? But she stayed mostly silent, just like Steve. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was grace. Maybe it was just exhaustion. Either way, the couple who once shared everything with the world had now gone quiet. But while the headlines were messy, Steve's fans were mostly supportive. They rallied behind him. Thousands of people commented under old videos, sending love and prayers. "You've helped us through so much, Steve. Now it's our turn to lift you up," one fan wrote. Another said, "You're still the king in our eyes. Don't let this break you." And Steve listened. He didn't bounce back overnight, but slowly, something inside him started to rebuild. He threw himself into work again. Not because he wanted to distract himself, but because work had always been his way of giving back. Helping people made him feel whole. Inspiring others gave him purpose. So he started writing again, planning again. There were talks about a new book, this time not about how to find love, but how to survive heartbreak. A different kind of wisdom, a different kind of truth. He knew now, more than ever, that people needed real, honest voices, not just feel-good advice, but raw stories of pain and perseverance. He also started spending more time with his kids. His grown children had seen him through the ups and downs, and now they were helping him through one of the hardest seasons of his life. They reminded him of who he was, not just a star or a brand, but a father, a provider, a man who had overcome more than once. And that's what Steve began to focus on, the fact that he had been here before. This wasn't his first heartbreak. It wasn't his first time starting over. He'd been broke, homeless, and lost in life before. He had climbed out of that darkness once, and he believed he could do it again. Because heartbreak may knock you down, but it doesn't have to end your story. Slowly, the smile started to return, not the fake one he used to wear for the cameras, but a real one, a quiet one. A smile of survival, of growth, of a man who had been broken but refused to stay that way. He also started talking about love differently. Not bitterly, not cynically, but with more depth. In one interview, he said, "Love is still beautiful, even if it hurts you. Because love shows you what matters, and sometimes it shows you what you need to let go of." That line hit home for a lot of people, because we've all been there. Holding on when we should have walked away. Steve wasn't ashamed of his pain anymore. He was learning to carry it, not hide it, not deny it, just carry it with grace. Fans began to see this new version of him, a little older, a little quieter, but maybe even wiser than before. He still made people laugh, still gave great advice, but now there was a new layer to him, a depth that only comes from walking through fire. So what happens now? Steve Harvey moves forward not as the perfect man, not as the relationship guru with all the answers, but as someone who's been deeply hurt and still chooses to keep going. That's the part that breaks hearts and heals them at the same time. Because if a man like him, with so much to lose, can survive something like this, maybe we all can. And maybe that's the real story, not just the fall of a marriage, but the rise of a man who refused to let pain define him. He may have lost love, but he didn't lose himself. And sometimes that's the greatest victory of all.